So picture this. You are sitting in like this incredibly beige office.
Oh, yeah. We all know that exact room. The classic, sterile, corporate waiting area.
Right. And the air conditioner is humming just a little too loudly, like it's physically vibrating against the window pane.
The tension in those rooms is just palpable. You're sitting across from someone who basically holds your entire professional future in their hands.
Exactly. Your income, your career trajectory, and honestly, maybe even your self-esteem. It's all just sitting right there on their desk.
And then the room just goes entirely quiet.
Yeah. They look you right in the eye, they lean forward just a tiny fraction of an inch, and they ask you the 4 most terrifying words in the English language.
Tell me about yourself.
Just hearing it gives me anxiety.
I mean, it triggers the absolute definition of the universal freeze response, doesn't it?
It totally does. And the wild thing is, on paper, it sounds like such a simple, open-ended invitation.
Right, because it's a subject you are literally the world's foremost expert on. You have lived with yourself your entire life.
But for like the vast majority of human beings, when we hear those 4 specific words in a high-stakes environment, the internal hard drive just completely crashes.
Oh, the system totally reboots. We just blank out.
It's as if you suddenly forget every interesting thing you've ever accomplished.
Every nuanced thought, every complex project you've ever handled.
Every hobby you've ever had. It all just vaporizes into that sterile office air.
Yeah.
And you just start babbling.
You default to things like, well, I'm nice, I like fun things, I work hard.
Which is, let's be honest, the verbal equivalent of conversational beige wallpaper.
That's a great way to put it. It technically covers the wall. It serves a basic functional purpose.
Yeah, it makes noise. But nobody is ever going to stop and admire it, let alone remember it 30 seconds after you walk out the door.
You just blend right into the background of 1,000 other applicants.
And so the underlying psychology of that moment is really what we have to untangle first today.
Absolutely, because what we are actually talking about here isn't merely vocabulary. We aren't just talking about, picking out fancier words from a thesaurus.
Right, this is way deeper than just sounding smart.
It is. We are talking about the complex economics of signaling value. The words we choose for ourselves in these high-stakes environments like interviews, first dates, major networking events, they act as a filter.
A filter for how the world perceives us, right?
Exactly. And ultimately, how the world treats us. Generic words yield generic, totally forgettable responses.
But precise, thoughtful words act as a magnet. They attract the right kind of attention, and they immediately establish authority.
Which is exactly the core mission of our deep dive today.
Yes. We are staging an absolute rescue mission for your personal brand.
We have this fascinating stack of source material today from the Advanced Learner Studio.
Right, and specifically, we are looking at these extensive session notes led by 2 language experts.
Yes, Emma and John.
Yeah.
And their entire mission in these sessions is helping people master the deeply nuanced art of self-description.
Now, I think the context of this material is super important for you listening. This was originally designed for people trying to reach what is known as C2 level English.
Yeah, and for those who aren't familiar with those linguistic scales, C2 isn't just like fluent.
It's way beyond that, right?
It is the absolute peak of the common European framework of reference for languages.
Meaning, at the C2 level, you aren't just ordering a coffee or, successfully navigating a basic workplace meeting.
No, you understand subtext. You understand humor, complex cultural idioms.
And those slight, almost microscopic emotional differences between 2 words that technically mean the exact same thing in a dictionary.
Right. A C2 speaker doesn't just communicate basic information, they manipulate the psychological nuance of the entire conversation.
But the real beauty of this source material, the reason we chose it for today's deep dive, is that you don't need to be a non-native speaker studying for an exam to benefit from it.
Oh, not at all. Native speakers make these exact same catastrophic branding errors every single day.
I know, I definitely have.
We all have. So the goal of this deep dive is to figure out how to accurately present your professional and personal self with that exact C2 level precision.
Without sounding like some sort of corporate robot.
Exactly. And more importantly, without accidentally assassinating your own character in the process.
So true. But before we can even begin to think about constructing this beautiful, sophisticated vocabulary,
we have to address the structural foundation. We have to look at the cracks in the concrete first.
Because what the source material from Emma and John reveals, and honestly, it is incredibly stark when you actually see it written down, is that candidates frequently self-sabotage.
They do. And they do it simply because they don't understand the strict, unforgiving mechanics of how English adjectives actually operate.
So let's start right there with the catastrophic mechanics of self-sabotage.
The notes highlight this highly common, incredibly painful scenario.
Yeah, picture this. A candidate walks in, sits down in that beige office, and they desperately want to project an image of being a serious, hyper-focused professional.
Right. And instead, they look the interviewer right in the eye and say, I am an incredibly boring person.
Oh my gosh. It is genuinely painful to even analyze because you know exactly what the candidate meant to say.
You do, but the result is just a complete conversational car crash.
And this happens because the English language is incredibly rigid about the difference between the cause of a feeling and the feeling itself, right?
Yes, precisely. We are talking about the catastrophic ing versus in grammar trap.
So break that down for us. What is the actual trap?
Well, in English, adjectives ending in n words like boring, tiring, interesting, they describe the generator of a feeling.
The generator. Okay.
Right. Well, the adjectives ending in ed like bored, tired, interested describe the receiver of that feeling.
So it's like the physics of a movie theater.
I love that analogy. Explain that.
Well, if you use an ing word, if you sit there and say, I am boring, you are basically the projector sitting in the back of the auditorium.
Exactly. You are actively shooting a beam of absolute dullness out into the world.
You are the contagion. You are the factory that is manufacturing the boredom.
But if you say, I am bored, you are the blank movie screen.
Right. You are the one receiving the emotion from some outside force. You are the victim of a lack of stimulation in your environment.
And the psychological difference to the listener is just staggering.
I can imagine. It completely changes how they view you.
When you say, I am boring, you are actively handing the hiring manager a warning label. You are literally telling them, I cause people around me to lose interest.
Wow. So it creates an immediate subconscious psychological distance.
It really does. The interviewer instinctively wants to pull away from you to protect their own energy.
Whereas if you say, I am bored,
Yeah.
I mean, they might actually feel sympathy for you. They might think, oh, your current job just isn't challenging you enough.
Exactly. But I am boring acts as a total repellent. It is an active threat to the energy of the room.
Okay, but wait, let's look at the flip side of that specific rule. Because if being the generator of a feeling is what ing does, isn't it highly strategic to be the generator of positive things?
I see where you're going with it.
Let's say I'm sitting in that interview and I want to show I'm super engaged with the company. I'm dynamic. I'm bringing great energy, right?
Sure.
So I lean in and I confidently say, I am interesting. That's an N-O-R-E word. I'm projecting a positive trait. I am the projector beaming fascination. How is that not a totally winning move?
Okay. That specific scenario is a trap so many ambitious people fall into. And the source material calls it out specifically.
Really? Why is it a trap?
Because if you say, I am interesting, you are indeed claiming to be the generator of fascination. But you have to analyze how that actually lands in a real social dynamic.
How does it land?
By declaring, I am interesting, you are building a solitary pedestal for yourself. You are entirely unprompted declaring to the room, I am the most fascinating person here. You should be captivated by me.
Oh, wow. So it completely changes the framing from enthusiasm to just pure arrogance.
Completely. It signals a massive deficit in social awareness.
It frames you not as a highly engaged, collaborative candidate, but as a narcissist who lacks the social grace to let other people discover your value organically.
You hit the nail on the head. You are basically telling them how to feel about you, rather than demonstrating it.
So by trying to be the projector instead of the screen, you just totally ruin the dynamic.
Yes. You actually wanted to say, I am interested, meaning I'm deeply engaged with what you are saying. I am receiving the positive energy of this company. I am an active listener.
But by forcing the ing on there, you make it all about your ego.
Precisely. And you know, there is another mechanical trap, the source flags, that is just as insidious, particularly for bilingual candidates.
Right, because it operates on a logic that makes perfect sense in other languages, but utterly fails in English.
Exactly. It is the have versus be trap. The notes show this constantly. A candidate trying to project strength will sit down and say, I have confident, or I have patient.
And the translation interference here is just fascinating to dissect, because if you speak French, Spanish, Italian, or honestly many other languages, personal traits and physical states are often framed as objects or entities that you possess.
Yes, you have hunger, you have patience, you have 20 years of age.
So the logical pathway in the speaker's brain is actually entirely sound. They're thinking, patience is a noun. It is a thing of value. I possess this thing. Therefore, I have patient.
But the English language just doesn't operate on that framework of possession. English is highly existentialist when it comes to adjectives or personal states.
Existentialist, I like that. We don't just hold these things, we are them.
Right. We don't keep our character traits in a little box in our briefcase to pull out when needed. We embody them. We exist as them at a cellular level.
So you don't have confidence. Your very being is confident. You must say, I am patient or I am confident.
Yes. Because if you walk into a high-stakes banking interview and say, I have patient, the interviewer's brain is going to momentarily short-circuit.
Grammatically, they're going to picture you with a sick person waiting for medical care out in the lobby.
Exactly. It introduces this unintentional comedy into a situation where you are actively trying to establish deep professional credibility.
It just completely shatters the professional frame you're trying to build.
It does shatter the frame. And the larger psychological point here, the reason this matters so much beyond just, passing a grammar test is about cognitive friction.
Cognitive friction. Break that down for me.
Every time you make a mechanical error like that, the listener has to expend a fraction of a calorie of brain power to decode what you meant to say.
Right, they have to translate it in their head.
And then they have to reevaluate their perception of you.
It totally slows down the transaction of ideas.
Yes. Fixing these mechanical foundational errors, knowing instinctively and automatically that you are patient and you are interested, it removes the mental friction for the listener.
Because when a hiring manager doesn't have to spend any subconscious energy decoding your grammar, they can focus 100% of their attention on the value, weight, and brilliance of your ideas.
You establish immediate, frictionless trust.
So, once you have finally stopped accidentally referring to yourself as a boredom factory or like a medical kidnapper, you are finally standing on solid ground.
Yes, you have successfully stopped the self-sabotage.
But solid ground is just the baseline, right?
Yeah.
It just means you aren't actively sinking.
Exactly. The question now becomes, how do you stop being invisible? Because an absence of mistakes absolutely does not equal a presence of value.
Which brings us to the next big trap. Because the most pervasive issue in self-description, once the grammar is actually fixed, is what the source material identifies as the nice trap.
Oh, the nice trap. People default to words like nice, good, or friendly because those words feel incredibly safe.
They feel unassailable. Nobody can argue with you if you say you're a nice person.
Fine, they are safe, but they are entirely hollow.
Right, nice is basically the conversational equivalent of packing peanuts.
Packing peanuts! That is the perfect visual.
Yeah, when you open a shipping box, there's all this styrofoam taking up space, filling the void so things don't rattle around.
But it has absolutely zero weight, zero nutritional value, and zero utility.
Exactly. If you introduce me to a colleague and tell me they are nice, you have given me zero actionable data about who they actually are.
Does nice mean they bake bread for the entire office on Fridays?
Or does nice just mean they never make eye contact, never offer an opinion, and never yell at anyone? Nice is just a void.
And the psychological analysis of why nice fails so spectacularly in high-stakes environments is really crucial here.
Why does it fail?
Because when you sit in an interview and declare, I am nice, you are only signaling one very specific thing. A lack of harm.
A lack of harm.
Yes. You are essentially telling the employer, I am not a threat. I will not cause a scene in the break room. I will not actively sabotage the company.
But a lack of harm completely fails to signal actual value.
Right. It's like a restaurant putting up a massive billboard that says, our food is not poisoned.
We assume that is the prerequisite for doing business. I am not going to award you a Michelin star for not making me violently ill.
Exactly. Employers don't just want an employee who won't break the machinery. They are paying a salary to someone they expect to actively build and improve the machinery.
So the vocabulary must be upgraded. We have to move from defensive words to offensive, value-generating words.
And the source material from Emma and John gives us some incredible side-by-side comparisons of how to elevate these baseline concepts.
Let's examine the first major upgrade they suggest, moving from smart to curious. Now, John, one of the C2 experts leading the session, specifically chooses curious as his defining professional word.
Yes, he does, and it's a very deliberate choice.
But let me stop right there, because I think a lot of people listening might instinctively disagree with John's choice.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, think about a hyper-competitive corporate environment, say tech, finance, or law. Doesn't every single hiring manager want to hire the smartest person in the room?
It seems like they would, yes.
So why would smart be considered an inferior, almost dangerous word to use compared to curious?
It's a great question. To understand why smart is a trap, we have to look at the life cycle of a modern employee. Smart is a closed loop.
A closed loop.
Yes. It is a static historical claim about your IQ or your past academic achievements. If you sit in an interview and say, I am smart, it implies a fixed state of knowing.
Like you have acquired the knowledge and you are just holding it.
Exactly. But in modern industries where technology, software, and methodologies literally change every 6 months, what you know today, your current baseline of smartness, is going to become obsolete incredibly quickly.
So claiming to be smart is almost like saying, I have crossed the finish line of knowledge. I am fully baked.
That is exactly how it is perceived subconsciously. It can signal inflexibility. You think you already have all the answers.
And nobody wants to work with a know-it-all who refuses to adapt.
Precisely. But curious operates on an entirely different engine. Curious implies a growth mindset. It implies continuous momentum.
So a curious person isn't just going to sit in a cubicle and recite answers they memorized 5 years ago.
No, a curious person is going to tear apart the new software update to figure out how it works. They are going to ask why a legacy process is failing.
They are going to adapt to market shifts.
Exactly. Curious is future-proof. It signals aggressive future adaptability, which, to a company looking at a 5-year timeline, is infinitely more valuable than a static snapshot of past intelligence.
That reframing really changes everything. You aren't promising, all the answers. You're promising you possess the biological drive to find all the answers.
It's a much more powerful promise.
Okay, let's look at Emma's defining word from the source material. She describes herself as organized.
Right. And on the surface, organized sounds like a massive cliche.
It totally does.
Yeah.
It feels like it belongs in the exact same dustbin as my greatest weakness is that I care too much, or I'm a perfectionist.
If you just say, I am organized, it bounces right off the listener's brain. It means nothing.
But Emma utilizes a critical communication strategy here to save it. She uses the show, don't tell rule.
The show don't tell rule is the absolute bedrock of persuasive communication because adjectives, by their very nature, are abstract concepts.
The human brain struggles to hold on to abstractions, right?
It does. Claims must be backed by concrete, visceral, visual evidence.
So Emma doesn't just toss out the adjective organized and expect the room to believe her. She provides a hyper-specific, almost vulnerable detail about her daily life.
Yes, she admits that her entire existence is governed by color-coded spreadsheets.
And John immediately chimes in to validate this, mentioning her immaculately clean desk.
The moment she mentions the color-coded spreadsheets, she wins.
She does. It instantly transports the listener. Even just hearing you say it, my brain immediately visualizes the monitor. I can see the neon green and pale blue tabs.
You can see the conditional formatting rules she set up.
Exactly. I completely believe her claim now because she gave me architectural proof. If you claim a trait in an interview, you cannot just drop the word. You have to attach a one-sentence visual anchor to it so it hooks into the listener's memory.
Because without that visual anchor, the adjective just floats away into the ether. They'll forget it instantly.
Right. Now let's look at another essential utility upgrade from the source notes. The shift from friendly to approachable.
This is a big one. This is not just a vocabulary tweak. This is a profoundly important paradigm shift for anyone looking to move out of entry-level roles and into management or leadership.
I think this is my favorite distinction in the entire stack of notes because it breaks down the literal physics of human interaction.
It really does. How so?
Well, friendly is a purely internal, localized state of being. I can be friendly entirely by myself.
That's true.
I can be sitting alone in a dark room, smiling at a memory of a golden retriever, projecting warm energy. It requires absolutely zero interaction with another human being.
But approachable is entirely relational. It requires a subject and an object.
That is the definitive difference. Approachable is an active, ongoing management strategy.
Let's ground this in a real-world scenario. You can have a boss or a manager who is deeply, genuinely friendly as a person.
Right. When you see them at the company holiday party, they smile, they ask about your kids, they remember your birthday.
But that exact same person might be completely unapproachable in the day-to-day workflow.
Oh, I've had that boss.
We all have. If their office door is perpetually closed, if their calendar is triple booked, if they constantly look frantic and stressed.
Or if they check their email on their phone while you are actively trying to give them an update, they're friendly, but they are utterly inaccessible.
That is such a vivid picture. Being approachable means you are actively doing the labor to remove the friction and barriers between you and your team.
It means you manage your resting face, your body language, your tone of voice, and your time architecture.
In a way that actively invites people to bring you small problems before they metastasize into massive disasters.
Exactly. Friendly is a mood you happen to be in. Approachable is the utility you provide to the company.
And we see a very similar shift from a passive trait to an active utility when the source material advises moving from honest to straightforward.
This one makes so much sense to me. If someone sits down across a desk from me, looks me in the eye and says, "I want you to know I am a very honest person."
Your immediate visceral reaction is suspicion.
Completely. My brain immediately asks, why are you going out of your way to tell me this? What are you hiding?
It feels like a hostage negotiation.
It does. Honesty is the absolute moral floor of participating in a civilized society. It shouldn't require press release.
It's the concept of negative space in language. By shining a massive spotlight on the fact that you aren't a liar, you make me wonder if you usually are.
It creates unnecessary anxiety in the listener.
But the word straightforward bypasses that suspicion entirely because it signals something highly desirable in a fast-paced business context.
Aggressive efficiency.
Exactly. A straightforward person doesn't just refrain from lying. They actively work to make the truth as clear and actionable as possible.
A straightforward colleague tells you the bad news directly and immediately.
They don't wrap critical feedback in a thick layer of passive-aggressive corporate jargon. They don't make you guess what they are thinking.
They are low maintenance. They value the shortest, most efficient distance between 2 points in human communication.
So words like approachable and straightforward are fantastic tools for surviving and thriving in everyday office dynamics.
They make you the kind of colleague people genuinely want to work with on a Tuesday afternoon.
But this raises a major situational question. What happens when the stakes get significantly higher?
Right. What happens when you aren't just applying for a lateral move, but major promotions are on the line?
Or when millions of dollars are in play, or when major company-defining high-risk responsibilities are up for grabs.
Yeah, approachable isn't going to cut it when you are asking someone to hand you the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah.
We need a much heavier caliber of vocabulary.
We absolutely do need heavier artillery for those moments. And that brings us to what the source material essentially frames as the holy trinity of workplace trust.
Reliable, dependable, and conscientious.
Yes, these are the heavy hitters. These are the foundational words that entire multi-decade reputations are built upon.
The source notes kind of group reliable and dependable together as the baseline currency of the professional world. They're almost interchangeable, right?
For all practical intents and purposes, yes, they function as synonyms in this context.
So what do they really signify?
If you are reliable, people can mathematically count on you. If you promise that a quarterly report will be done by Friday at noon, it is sitting in their inbox at 11:55 a.m. on Friday every single time.
And what experienced managers know, and what they're desperately looking for in interviews, is that an average competent worker who is 100% reliable is always a better long-term investment than an unreliable genius.
That is so true. The unreliable genius archetype is so heavily romanticized in movies, you know? The brilliant maverick.
But in an actual corporate setting, they are a high-risk liability.
You never know if they are going to swoop in at the 11th hour and save the company with a brilliant idea, or if they are going to blow a massive client deadline because they got distracted or decided they didn't feel inspired that week.
Managers, at their core, do not want to manage risk. They want to manage predictable results. Reliability completely eliminates the risk variable.
But then we reach the absolute peak of the mountain, the C2 level power word that stands above the rest.
Conscientious.
Even just the phonetics of the word conscientious sounds expensive.
It does. It has so much gravity to it. It sounds like a word that wears a tailored suit.
It carries an immense amount of moral weight. That is the critical distinction here. Being reliable simply means you execute the task you were assigned on time.
Right, checking the boxes.
But being conscientious means you have a deeply held, internal, almost philosophical standard of excellence regarding how that task is done.
You aren't just checking boxes on a rubric because a supervisor is watching you.
No, you are doing the work thoroughly, meticulously, and perfectly because doing it poorly would violate your own personal code of ethics.
Let me push back on this, though.
Sure, go ahead.
Because I can see a scenario where this actually backfires. Can a person be too conscientious?
That's a very fair question.
If I'm a hiring manager and I hear someone say they have an intense, unwavering internal standard of excellence that must be satisfied, my brain might immediately translate that to bottleneck perfectionist.
Ah, I see.
Let's say I'm hiring a paramedic. I don't want a conscientious paramedic who is standing over a bleeding patient, taking 5 extra minutes to make sure their handwriting on the medical chart is perfectly legible.
Right, that would be a disaster.
Or what about a tech startup? If you are a perfectionist, you are going to slow us down.
That is a phenomenal stress test of the word, and it really highlights why context is the ultimate dictator of vocabulary.
Context is everything.
If you are interviewing at a hyper fast-paced, early stage, move fast and break things startup environment where the entire objective is just to get a minimum viable product out the door by midnight to secure funding, extreme conscientiousness can absolutely be a fatal flaw.
It can paralyze the entire production pipeline.
Furthermore, a highly conscientious person in that specific environment is a prime candidate for severe, rapid burnout.
Because their internal standards of excellence are constantly being violated by the mandatory speed and sloppiness of the workflow.
Precisely. They wouldn't be able to let go of the imperfections. They would be fixing typos at 3 a.m. while the company burns down.
Right. So it's not universally good.
However, in the vast majority of established, high-stakes industries, corporate finance, structural engineering, corporate law, aviation conscientiousness is the absolute gold standard of character traits.
Why is it the gold standard there?
Because fundamentally, it signals an owner mindset. When you are conscientious, you treat the work as if your own name is on the building.
You catch microscopic errors in the spreadsheet before anyone else sees them, not because you were told to look for them, but because you actually care about the structural integrity of the output.
That owner mindset is what every CEO is desperately searching for.
But here's the friction point. While being a highly conscientious, perfectly reliable machine is fantastic for producing sheer volume of work, a workplace is not just a robotic factory.
No, it is a highly complex, often messy biological ecosystem full of complicated human beings.
And to actually survive the social environment, to get promoted, to get buy-in for your ideas, we have to accurately describe our social energy to these managers without accidentally pigeonholing ourselves as outcasts.
Which requires us to completely rebrand how we talk about the social spectrum.
This section of the source material is deeply empathetic, I thought, because it addresses how many highly competent people unintentionally diminish and demean themselves when talking about their own introversion or extroversion.
The source notes specifically attack what they call the shy stigma.
I see this happen all the time. If a fully grown 30-year-old professional sits in an interview and says, "I'm sorry, I'm just a bit shy," it immediately infantilizes them.
The interviewer's brain immediately pictures a small child hiding behind their mother's leg at a noisy birthday party.
It frames their entire personality as a deficit. It frames their quietness as a fear-based constraint, a weakness that they are a helpless victim of.
It functions as an apology for existing. I'm sorry that I am shy.
But the source provides a magnificent, empowering rebranding for introverts, replacing shy with the word reserved.
That changes the framing entirely. It completely restores the dignity and agency of the speaker. It changes the entire physical vibe of the statement.
It really does, because the word reserved implies intentionality.
Yes, it implies a deliberate, strategic holding back of energy. You aren't cowering in the corner in fear of social interaction. You are actively choosing to observe.
You are silently analyzing the power dynamics of the room before you deploy your social capital.
It frames quietness not as a nervous affliction, but as a tactical, highly intelligent choice.
It's essentially like handing the hiring manager the user manual for your exact personality type.
How do you mean?
You are saying, I am reserved in large, chaotic group settings, meaning my optimal operating environment is one-on-one networking. You are telling them exactly how to deploy you to get the maximum return on their investments.
That's brilliant.
Do not put me on a brightly lit stage with a microphone to hype up a crowd. Put me in a quiet, soundproof room with your single most important high net worth client, and I will build a deep, unshakable, profoundly loyal relationship with them.
Exactly. You are proactively managing their expectations so they don't set you up to fail.
But extroverts have their own linguistic landmines to avoid too, right? It's not just introverts who self-sabotage.
Oh, absolutely. The source unpacks the critical difference between describing yourself as a people person versus describing yourself as the life of the party.
A people person is a fantastic, safe, universally positive term. It simply means you draw energy and momentum from being around others. You thrive in collaboration.
But life of the party. You have to be so incredibly careful deploying that idiom in a professional setting.
Imagine a forensic accountant or a cardiac surgeon sitting down for an interview and boasting, "Hire me. I am the life of the party."
The visual is just absurd. It suggests you are going to bring a disco ball and a margarita machine to a tax audit.
Exactly. It implies a level of boisterous, chaotic, potentially distracting energy that is highly inappropriate for serious, detail-oriented professions.
You absolutely do not want the person performing your root canal to be the life of the party. You want them to be intensely focused, meticulous, and probably a bit reserved.
But despite the dangers of these labels, what I really appreciate in the source material are the metaphors they use to describe the fluidity of these traits. They move away from clinical psychology terms and use botanical imagery.
Yes, the wallflower and the social butterfly.
The wallflower is such an evocative, visually rich term.
You can instantly picture a plant growing on the extreme, quiet edge of the garden, leaning its weight against the structural support of the stone wall.
They're on the periphery. They're observing the chaotic center of the action from a place of structural safety.
And conversely, the social butterfly is the active pollinator.
They are circulating light, positive kinetic energy, flitting from group to group, making brief, colorful, but meaningful connections that keep the ecosystem alive.
What is genuinely inspiring in the notes is that Emma, who is one of the experts, someone who literally commands attention and speaks for a living, openly describes herself as having blossomed from a wallflower into a social butterfly.
That specific verb, blossomed, is the key to everything here. It proves that human personality isn't this fixed, rigid, genetic life sentence. It is fluid.
It highlights the vital concept that social skills are exactly that, they are skills. They are not innate biological traits. They are muscles that can be learned, practiced, and developed over time through exposure.
You might legitimately be a wallflower in your early 20s as you figure out who you are, and blossom into a highly effective social butterfly in your 30s as you gain confidence.
Both are entirely valid, necessary stages of personal growth.
But here is the massive logistical problem this creates for an interview. Because human personality is fluid, a person can actually be both highly reserved and a vibrant social butterfly, depending entirely on the context of the room.
Or how well they know the people, or how much sleep they got the night before.
Exactly. But how do you actually articulate that complexity to a hiring manager who is looking for a simple answer?
It's tricky.
If I just sit in the chair and say, I am a deeply reserved wallflower, and I am also a high-energy social butterfly, I am going to sound completely delusional. I sound like two different people fighting over the steering wheel.
Which brings us precisely to the grammatical architecture of contradictions and the art of softening.
This is where C2 level mastery really shines.
If you list completely contradictory traits back to back, like items on a grocery list, I am shy and outgoing, you create massive cognitive dissonance for the listener.
Their brain literally rejects the sentence because it sounds mutually exclusive and logically impossible.
It's like pouring a glass of water and saying, this water is currently boiling and also completely frozen.
The brain just says, no, it isn't. You are lying.
Exactly. The linguistic solution is to use time and frequency qualifiers to build a temporal bridge between the two traits.
So instead of the flat contradiction, I am shy and outgoing, you say what?
You say, I tend to be quite reserved initially, but once I get to know the dynamics of the team, I become quite outgoing.
That is structural perfection. It transforms a flat, confusing, contradictory label into a brilliant demonstration of deep emotional intelligence and self-awareness.
You are showing them the dynamic chronological progression of your personality. You're telling them a story of how you operate over time.
And demonstrating that deep self-awareness is exactly what we lean into when we talk about using softeners.
Because in a professional environment, there is a razor-thin, incredibly dangerous line between demonstrating confidence and exuding arrogance.
Claiming highly positive traits too bluntly, too forcefully, can immediately trigger the listener's ego defenses.
Confidence versus arrogance is literally just a matter of syntactic phrasing.
If I sit down and forcefully state, I am a brilliant, visionary leader, I immediately sound like a megalomaniac who's going to be an absolute nightmare to work with.
But the source notes give us these two perfect, mathematically precise formulas to bypass those ego defenses. Formula 1 is, I would describe myself as.
It seems like a microscopic tweak, just adding a few words, but psychologically, the impact is massive.
Saying I am is an absolute non-negotiable edict. It closes the door to conversation.
But saying I would describe myself as inherently invites dialogue. It sounds highly objective.
It sounds as if you have stepped completely outside of your own body, observed your own behavior over time like a detached scientist, and come to a measured, rational conclusion. It replaces ego with analysis.
And Formula 2 is even more effective for high-value traits. It is the ultimate weaponized humble brag. Colleagues often tell me.
Utilizing third-party validation is arguably the most powerful persuasion tool in your entire arsenal.
When you use that formula, you aren't actually claiming the trait yourself. You're merely acting as a neutral reporter of data.
Colleagues often tell me I am a calming presence in a crisis. It does so much heavy lifting simultaneously.
It tells the employer that you possess a highly desirable trait. It proves that you have excellent communicative relationships with your peers.
And it proves that you are receptive to feedback, all without you ever having to sound boastful or arrogant.
It is brilliant. But let me throw a wrench in the gears of this perfect system.
Oh.
All of these formulas work beautifully when you are talking about your strengths. But what happens when the interviewer inevitably hits you with the most dreaded, trap-laden question in corporate history?
What is your greatest weakness?
Yes. How do I use these softeners when I am actively forced to talk about my flaws without accidentally disqualifying myself from the job entirely?
This is where the source material introduces a structural masterpiece that we can refer to as the weakness sandwich.
The weakness sandwich, I love it.
It is a three-part formula designed specifically to neutralize the danger of the weakness question. The formula is trait plus trigger plus mitigation.
Walk me through the exact mechanics of that, because people ruin their interviews on this question constantly.
Let's dissect the classic example provided in the text. The candidate says, I can be a bit impatient when deadlines approach, but I'm working on it by utilizing project management software to track milestones earlier.
Okay, let's break down why this works perfectly on the listener's brain. First, the trait itself is softened. I can be a bit impatient.
They do not say, I am impatient, which sounds like a permanent toxic personality flaw. I can be frames it as a temporary, occasional state.
Okay, so you minimize the blast radius of the flaw immediately.
Exactly. Then comes the second, most crucial part, the trigger, when deadlines approach.
This gives the weakness vital context. It shows the interviewer that you aren't just randomly angry or inherently toxic. You get stressed because you care deeply about hitting the company's targets.
You have successfully reframed the weakness as a temporary, situational side effect of a core strength caring passionately about the work.
You are giving the listener the formula for your frustration, which makes you predictable. And managers love predictability.
And finally, the third piece, the mitigation. But I'm working on it by utilizing project management software to track milestones earlier.
This is the ultimate proof of emotional intelligence. It proves you are firmly in the driver's seat of your own personality.
You have correctly diagnosed your own flaw, and you have independently implemented a systemic protocol to control it. The interviewer doesn't have to fix you. You have already fixed yourself.
So these structures, the time qualifiers, the softeners, the weakness sandwich, they act as guardrails to keep you from sounding arrogant or broken.
But if you want to elevate from simply being competent to sounding truly native, culturally fluent, and authentically human, you have to master the idioms.
They're the cultural shorthand that proves you belong in the room. Let's look at the specific idioms the source notes highlight, starting with down to earth.
Idioms are the absolute peak of language mastery because they aren't just words. They carry centuries of historical and cultural weight compacted into a single phrase. But because they are so heavy, they must be deployed precisely.
Down to earth is a fascinating one. Just looking at the phrase, it obviously has very deep agricultural roots. It evokes the dirt, the soil.
It does. It implies that your feet are literally firmly planted in the soil of reality. You haven't floated away into the atmospheric clouds of your own ego or delusion.
But what is critical here is the social context of how it's used. It is almost exclusively deployed to describe people who possess high status, people who are highly successful, extremely wealthy, or famous, but who actively choose to retain their humility and egalitarianism.
You wouldn't typically describe a struggling entry-level intern as down to earth. It is a compliment reserved for the CEO who still chooses to eat lunch in the crowded employee cafeteria instead of the executive dining room.
It's the ultimate compliment for a successful person in a modern culture that highly values the illusion of equality. It says they have the power to be a tyrant, but they choose to be a peer.
Now, contrast the grounded nature of that with the idiom wearing your heart on your sleeve.
The imagery here is so vivid. This traces all the way back to medieval jousting tournaments, doesn't it?
Yes, the etymology is literal. Knights in the Middle Ages would take a ribbon or a small token from the lady they favored and physically tie it around their armor, on their sleeve, declaring their romantic loyalty openly and visibly for the entire arena to see before they rode into battle.
Today, it translates to total, unfiltered emotional transparency. You physically cannot hide what you are feeling. It is visible to everyone around you.
Now, if we analyze the utility of this phrase, in my private, personal life, if I'm dating someone, this is an incredibly beautiful trait.
It builds massive accelerated intimacy because I never have to guess what my partner is feeling. The communication is instant.
But in a high-stakes business context, let's say you are entering a brutal multi-million-dollar contract negotiation, wearing your heart on your sleeve is an incredibly dangerous liability.
If the opposing legal team can literally see your panic, your desperation, or your overeagerness painted on your face, they will ruthlessly exploit that information asymmetry.
Exactly. It is a beautiful trait for a friend and a fatal flaw for a negotiator, which is why understanding the specific context of an idiom is everything.
Now, consider the phrase old soul. This is a fascinating psychological reframing tool. It's almost entirely applied to young people who don't fit the expected mold of their demographic.
Right. It takes a behavioral trait that peers might heavily mock, like a teenager who prefers staying home on a Friday night reading Stoic philosophy and drinking tea, rather than going to a wild, loud party.
And it reframes that lack of youthful frenzy as a massive surplus of profound wisdom. It says, they aren't boring or socially inept, they just possess the quiet gravity and historical perspective of someone who has already lived several lifetimes.
It elevates them from an outcast to a sage.
And smoothly navigating all of these different idioms and phrases requires a high-level skill that sociolinguists call register switching.
True fluency, whether in a second language or your native tongue, isn't just knowing the vocabulary. It is knowing exactly when the social environment requires you to deploy it.
We all maintain a formal professional persona, which is governed by heavy words like focused, punctual, straightforward, and conscientious.
And we also maintain a private, relaxed persona, governed by words like playful, spontaneous, and reserved.
And the ultimate flex in an interview or a networking event is being able to seamlessly communicate to the listener that you safely possess both. You aren't a one-dimensional robot, and you aren't an unprofessional wild card.
Which brings up my absolute favorite historical analogy from the source material, letting my hair down.
It is such a visceral physical image. Historically, in high society, women would have to wear their hair pinned up tightly in these incredibly complex, heavy, restrictive styles in order to look formal, proper, and professional in public.
It literally caused physical pain and tension on the scalp. Taking the pins out, letting the heavy hair physically fall down, was the ultimate act of physical and psychological release when they finally got home to their private sanctuary.
So when you are in a professional setting and you say, I am highly conscientious and detail-oriented at work, but on the weekends I really love to just let my hair down, you are signaling total, safe multidimensionality.
You are explicitly telling the manager, I know exactly how to conform to the strict, rigid rules of the professional environment when I am on the clock, but I am also a fully realized, relaxed, well-adjusted human being in my private life. It makes you relatable.
But we have to issue a massive blinking red warning label here for anyone listening.
Yeah.
Because there is a very real, very embarrassing danger with utilizing idioms.
If you force them into a sentence where they don't organically belong, you will crash and burn spectacularly.
The source material is remarkably strict about this point. Do not force complex idioms into a conversation simply to prove to the room that you know them. Accuracy and organic flow always beat complexity.
If you walk into a casual morning meeting, grab a coffee, and loudly declare to the room, hello, colleagues, I am a social butterfly who is very down to earth and I wear my heart on my sleeve.
You do not sound like a fluent, charismatic C2 speaker. You sound like a malfunctioning AI algorithm that was fed a dictionary of cultural cliches and told to act human.
It is incredibly off-putting. You must use them sparingly as seasoning, only when they are the absolute most precise tool for the job.
Okay, let's bring all of these distinct elements together for the ultimate synthesis. All these individual pieces, we've analyzed the strict grammar rules of cause and effect, the vocabulary upgrades from nice to straightforward, the psychological softening formulas, the historical idioms. They only actually matter if you can assemble them dynamically when the pressure is on and the air conditioner is humming.
The source material gives us an incredible side-by-side autopsy of a catastrophic interview answer versus a fully optimized C2 level hireable answer. Let's analyze the bad one again.
E candidate sitting in the chair, nervous and sweating, delivers this. I am nice. I am a very boring person sometimes because I work hard. I have patience.
When you break it down based on everything we've discussed, it is a Shakespearean tragedy. Nice is empty, defensive styrofoam that signals zero value.
I am boring actively tells the interviewer you are a toxic, contagious cloud of dullness that will ruin the office vibe.
And I have patient makes you sound grammatically broken and existentially confused.
This candidate might legitimately be a genius software engineer. They might be the hardest worker in the city. But their clumsy, uncalibrated language has built an impenetrable brick wall in front of their actual talent. The interviewer will never see how good they are.
Now contrast that structural collapse with the fully optimized C2 hireable answer provided in the text. The candidate breathes, looks the interviewer in the eye, and says, I would describe myself as a conscientious professional. Colleagues often tell me that I'm reliable under pressure. While I can be a bit reserved initially, I pride myself on being a team player who is always willing to muck in to get the job done.
It is absolute poetry. It uses the softeners perfectly to avoid arrogance. It bridges the personality traits flawlessly. But the phrase that absolutely seals the deal for me, the knockout punch of that answer, is muck in.
Muck in is a brilliant, highly strategic inclusion by the source experts. Much like down to earth, it has deep agricultural roots. It literally means to put your boots on, get into the mud and the dirt of the farm, and help clean out the stables alongside the workers.
By pairing the high formality, slightly clinical, expensive word conscientious with the gritty, earthy, working-class phrase muck in, the candidate creates the perfect psychological balance.
It is the ultimate anti-diva phrase. It proves to the hiring manager that you possess elite, high-level standards, but you consider yourself above absolutely no one.
You are absolutely willing to get in the trenches, get your hands dirty, and do the unglamorous work alongside the team when the system is failing.
It sounds incredibly authentic. Which brings us to John's profound quote from the end of the source material. Authenticity translates in any language.
This entire deep dive, all these psychological tactics and vocabulary upgrades, they aren't a mask you wear to trick a hiring manager into liking someone who doesn't exist.
No, and that is a vital distinction. If you try to wear these high-level words as a disguise, if you claim to be highly conscientious, but your actual behavior is chaotic and sloppy, the massive inconsistency between your language and your actions will eventually expose you, and the fallout will be far worse than if you had just been quiet.
The vocabulary we've discussed today is not a mask. It is a meticulously tailored suit. It is meant to fit the exact, authentic contours of your actual personality, highlighting your true, existing strengths in the most flattering, precise, high-definition light possible.
And I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over as you prepare for your next big opportunity. We have spent this entire deep dive analyzing how the words you choose describe you to other people.
The source material briefly touches on the concept of linguistic relativity, the psychological theory that language actively shapes our own internal reality. The idea that if you stop calling yourself a shy, anxious person and start deliberately referring to yourself as tactically reserved, you actually begin to internalize that dignity.
Your posture changes. You stand a little taller. You fundamentally become a more confident person because you gave yourself a better label. It creates a powerful, positive, internal feedback loop. You act out the identity of the words you use.
Exactly. But I want to push this concept even further into the realm of social engineering. What about how your precise language programs the actual memories of the people around you? Think about the mechanics of memory.
Let's say you make a completely normal human mistake at work. A deadline slips or a project fails.
If you proactively label that past mistake in a debriefing meeting by saying, that was a momentary failure, or my intense curiosity about the new software temporarily outpaced my normal conscientiousness regarding the deadline, you are doing something incredibly dangerously powerful.
You are actively, surgically rewriting that manager's memory of your failure. You are forcing them to frame a negative, costly event using your absolute highest value positive traits.
You aren't just changing your own future behavior. You are retroactively hacking society's perception of your past.
That is a staggering sociological implication. By handing the people around you the exact high-definition C2 level vocabulary you want them to use when they think about you, you essentially trigger the Pygmalion effect on your own life.
The Pygmalion effect, yes. Because you have repeatedly consistently, flawlessly labeled yourself as conscientious, approachable, and straightforward, the ecosystem around you fundamentally expects you to be those things. They have no other vocabulary to describe you.
And because they expect it, they subconsciously treat you as if you already are the perfect employee.
Which, in turn, completely eliminates the friction in your environment, permanently locking you into actually being the absolute best, most successful version of yourself. You rise to the exact level of the vocabulary they use to describe you.
The words don't just passively describe the reality, they actively manufacture it.
So before you step into that humming beige office, before you sit down for that crucial first date, or before you walk into that networking event, ruthlessly audit your words. Because when they ask you to tell them about yourself, you aren't just answering a casual question. You are writing the exact script for how the world is going to treat you from that moment forward. Good luck out there.